You are listening to Missed Apex Podcast. We live F1. Welcome to Missed Apex Podcast. I'm your host, Richard Reddy, but my friends call me Spanners, so let's be friends. The title of today's show is, oh my goodness, we have another team in Formula One. That's not a very good title. It's not snappy. That's why Matt normally does the copy. But there has been a shock turnaround that Formula One is getting a new team, and it's not Andretti, it's Cadillac and GM. So we're going to ask who should drive for this new team in 2026. How well will they do? We'll also discuss the remaining battles in the 2024 season. We'll look forward to Qatar and talk about some random news links that Matt has pasted in. Speaking of Matt, well, here he is, Matt Trumpets. Hello, Matt.
Hello. All I can say is I'm both an American and I can drive. So, you know, I mean, if the phone rings, the phone rings.
You're very close to having to take that extra special test, though, aren't you? Like, Mr. Trumpets, can we see that you can check that you can still see stuff?
Oh, no. I can just go to my eye doctor writes me a note and then they just renew my license until I'm like 117 and can't remember, like, you know, which parts of my body are attached to which other parts.
Well, at your age, though, you'll only be able to do the day races. So we'll do the night races and you'll be like, oh, I don't know if I like driving in this light.
I just need like the anti-glare blue blockers. I'll just put them right over the helmet, you know.
Oh, my goodness. Why do they have to drive so fast? That's what I don't know. We're also joined by a young whippersnapper, really, in the form of Kyle Edgy Power. Hello, Kyle.
How's it going? I have my own vision issues. I genuinely crashed during the 2015 British 24 Hours in a night stint because I wasn't wearing my glasses. It was dark and I drove clean off the side of the track and into the wall because I was trying to flick back for a left-hander. So Matt's not alone there.
I don't think we should be as public about how prescriptively blind you drive race cars and karts, Kyle. Yeah. I think we should keep it to ourselves.
Maybe if I could see, I'd probably be like semi-good. But never mind.
We'll never know.
We'll
okay.
Never know.
But we will know and remind you that we are an independent podcast produced in the podcasting shed with the kind permission of our patrons and partners. We aim to bring you a race review before your Monday morning commute. We might be wrong, but we're first. Okay, so this is interesting. We are definitely going to have a team that is rumored to be called Cadillac, or there's an agreement in principle. They are backed by GM, a massive manufacturer. So I think this more or less counts as a works team. So in theory, on paper, we've got a Mercedes, Ferrari, we've got Audi, and then Alpine, if that doesn't get sold, because it's not for sale, you know, and GM Cadillac. So this is looking like it's definitely going to happen. We covered a lot of the stuff of the how and the why, and I'm sure we'll get into more of the legal stuff in the future. But right now, we want to deal with this new reality that there's going to be an 11th car on the grid. So we asked our patrons in the patron Discord what they reckon, who they think the driver lineup should be. So here's a few of them. Sam says Danny Rick is driving the hauler. That's cruel. And changing nationality. There was a lot of votes for Daniel Ricciardo as a kind of honorary Texan. Adam Rosales says they need someone with solid experience in F1 like Bottas. Now Kyle is enraged by the suggestion of Bottas. I'm actually gonna defend. I'm gonna make a case for Bottas. Toby W says Herta, but he is a bit crash prone. Marcio, I think Cadillac should have one North American and one South American driver. So he's going for Drogovic and Herta. Ed Bleach says maybe they might give someone like Jake Dennis a go, seeing as he drives for Andretti in Formula E. We love Jake Dennis here at Missed Apex Podcast. And Archer says Perez is North American. He will surely get the nod. Calm down, Kyle. We'll get to it. All right. So how do you want to structure this, Matt? Because you've actually categorized the potential drivers quite well into some indie drivers, because everyone's looking F1, current F1 drivers, obviously, to pick from, recent F1 drivers. What is JRS? What's JRS?
Juniors.
Oh, juniors. That would have an N in it. JNR, small s. And I've got one NASCAR pick as well for this seat. So the main thing I want to say to you guys is I think who they pick says a lot about the ambition of the team, Kyle. Like, this is a big flag to the rest of F1. If they turn up with Mazepin and Sorokin, it kind of gives away what kind of outfit they're going to be.
Yeah. Equally, I don't think they're going to be short of a bob or two, are they, with GM behind them? So I don't think they're going to be taking on really like a pay driver. They absolutely must have. Now, I'm not going to say directly an American driver. They probably should do, but I think they need an American connected driver. So in my opinion, that's pretty much any well-known, does well IndyCar driver that's been there for a while, like a Pato O'Ward, or someone who's not necessarily American, but who is very well known to them. So yeah, I don't think they're going to go for like just the pay driver, the thing. They should have a wise experience thing and a young charger, preferably. Well, one of them has to be American, whether that's the experience.
Do you think so? One of them has to be. One of them has to be. So we do have an American actually on the panel today. Matt is actually American, even though he started adding U's to things like honor and color because we've anglicized him so much, and speaks in Celsius and miles an hour as well. This insistence that there must be an American is, I get that, that's okay, but I don't understand why it drifts into, okay, let's look at IndyCar, because IndyCar isn't some kind of wallflower waiting to be acknowledged by Formula One. I'd imagine the people in IndyCar are pretty happy being in IndyCar.
Yeah, well, what I want to get in here really quickly is, let's not forget, if we're talking about works teams, it's not Alpine, it's Red Bull with the Ford, and it is Aston with the Honda, adding to the surfeit suddenly of works teams that we'll see in Formula One in 26. GM supposedly bringing their own engine in 28. Not confirmed yet, though. They're going to try. But the place I would look that is being ignored right now, and people focus on IndyCar because IndyCars look kind of like Formula One cars. It makes sense. But IMSA with the prototypes is also a real place to look. So there's a whole nother list of drivers who drive these prototypes. You remember, not too long ago, we went to Houston and talked to Jenson Button, who drives one of those.
I remember.
I figured that you would. And so there's a whole nother list of drivers that they could potentially farm because they're already in that space.
So for me, these drivers, I don't follow IMSA that closely. And to answer Spanner's question, why does everyone default to IndyCar? Is like, I don't think there's that many Americans floating around in the junior sort of categories that we're kind of aware of. And IndyCar is quite sort of present and sort of really well sought after. So who from IMSA potentially? Are there some young American hotshots racing around
that's interesting.
in things in IMSA? Because yeah, I don't really pay too much attention to IMSA.
There's really cool. Definitely going to be great drivers out there outside of the F1 structure who could have been in F1. Like, definitely. No one is saying that only F1 has good drivers. My big concern here, before we get into the specific drivers that we're talking about, is, you're right, Kyle. There is no natural F1 driver from America coming through the ladder. So if you're going to get an American for the sake of having an American, because be clear, that is what we're talking about. If you happen to pick an American who's doing fantastically in F2, fair enough, I get that. But if you're saying we need to have an American for the sake of having an American, you are going to have to make a compromise or find some secret that no one else knew. There's an American doing something else and you persuade him to come over to be in Formula One. Is that the thinking, Matt? Is there some great IndyCar driver who, if you throw enough money at him, he's going to come over and really show F1 that actually the real talent's over in IndyCar?
So I have two arguments and then a response. Argument one is there are actually two Americans right now that could be looked at. One of whom is Ugo Chukwu, which I will not have pronounced correctly.
No. I think that's a fair effort, and that is a difficult name for Anglo palates. So I think that's acceptable.
I've never heard it pronounced before, so I'm really having to guess.
You attempted it respectfully, which I think is the main thing.
And he's a McLaren driver, but he's driving for Prema and F3 this season, and he's had some hype. He won a European karting championship at age 13, so he's definitely on the ladder. The other person not to be overlooked, who you saw win the first podium ever for any Haas driver, would be Chloe Chambers, who's currently in the F1 Academy. So she is another American who potentially is out there and might get dragged. I mean, obviously being a Haas driver, Haas will probably want to keep her, but she's an American name. And if I'm GM, I would certainly be thinking about trying to give her a role in the Formula One team, just for general good vibes, if nothing else.
26 would be too soon, surely.
So there's not like there's no one, but there is a very small bench in the European side of the Formula One ladder of Americans. And then always the problem there is they go and they live, as we saw with Logan Sargent, they go and they live in Europe. So they don't really feel American. Whereas IndyCar drivers that we're going to talk about mostly aren't actually American, but they race mostly in American, and American fans know them. And that's probably what GM will look to.
All right, then. Okay, so, I just wanted to make sure I covered sort of the general points before going into the specific drivers. So I have a concern here. So my concern is, fine, look outside. And I'm not calling it like it's a DEI kind of situation. But if it's important to you to have an American driver, that's fine. I mean, we've had people backing Swedish drivers, Japanese drivers, Danish drivers, we've Mexican drivers. We have had national-based sponsorship or promotion of drivers in Formula One. That's nothing completely different. But I would say if you're going to have that, you're going to need to pair that with some either genuine current F1 talent, or at the very least, an experienced F1 driver. So I feel like if you're bringing someone in on the American ticket, you need to, and that's going to be my main case for Bottas at the moment. So that's my last non-specific driver point, Matt.
Right. So what you're talking about, and I think this is the real dilemma for the GM people. What you're looking at is, and I think I'm going to take Lawson, I'm going to take Colapinto. And I'm going to point out that in a lot of ways, the Formula One talent picking machine isn't very optimized, because both of those drivers walked into race cars and did phenomenally well, better than certain other people who were favored and said to be good, and then walked in and were completely unimpressive. So I think the Formula One talent picking machine itself isn't the greatest. So the possibility exists that you find one of these drivers who can just walk in and smash it. I would love to see that. But the reality is they're building a team.
Yeah.
And what you want is someone who already knows what it's like to drive a really great Formula One car, who knows what it's like to be in a really great Formula One team.
Yeah. So to agree at a tangent, I would say find someone who's really great, who is capable of smashing it, and then put them through F3, F2, or put them through a testing regime. Yeah, I think it's very different to saying who would be the best out-and-out talent, because loads of people from Junior Series then went off and did very well because they didn't have the funds or the connections to get into Formula One. But I still think you need that to hit the ground running. You would need that testing. You would need to come through that junior ladder. So we can consider all of that going forward. The one name that we've heard, because I think starting at Indy kind of makes sense, because that seems to be what everyone's talking about. So the names I'm hearing are Paolo O'Ward, but most of all, Herta. So I don't know anything about Colton Herta. What do we know as predominantly F1 fans? Uh-oh. Do we know nothing?
Well, I mean, I was giving Kyle a chance to jump in there and just make things up. But he
no, you make things up.
I can make some stuff up.
Yeah, go on then, Kyle. You're on.
He seems all right. I've done a bit of digging on him, and he has done some European racing and was in British F3 and was a race winner in British F3, which is highly revered. So he's clearly got it about him, but he hasn't won IndyCar. He's had a couple of sort of wobbly seasons. He's had some really strong seasons in IndyCar. He does it like the best candidate, but in his defense, and in my opinion, IndyCar can be a bit of a roll of the dice of luck sometimes, and you can get wildly fluctuating performances. It's really good. We've obviously got people like Alex Palau, who was really good, and sort of Scott Dixon and people like this who are consistent. But Herta actually looks semi-decent. He's got the marketability. He's well known in America and is American, and he's got some of the European experience already under his belt. So he would be a good one. Yes, people say he's crashy, but I don't think he's there to actually perform. I think he's there for the American connection, marketability. Yes, he can go and smash the car about for a couple of seasons whilst the team establish themselves, and then maybe they can go for some more serious drivers, or I'm not saying he's not serious, or he might excel and be really good in F1. You just don't know. We've seen this, as you mentioned before, with loads of drivers who cannot be good. So my vote would be Herta. It seems at the time of speaking, the most sensible option to go for.
Okay, Colton Herta. So this is interesting. So this is Karen pointing out in our Patreon chat, Herta heavily sponsored by Taurus, the non-GM based money behind the new team. So the connection seems to be there. And probably it's not a coincidence that this name is being pushed out a lot. I'm sure there's big PR teams behind it, but he doesn't have a super license. So I'm assuming there's a God clause with super license where you definitely need a super license unless it's slightly inconvenient to people with money and power.
Well, in the old days, that was always the way it was. You had to have a super license unless the team wanted you to drive for them. And then the FAA would wave their hands and say, okay, yeah, sure, fine. I'm believing that Herta is within 1 point of a super license. I didn't research it, but
25,
I think I've seen that. Someone has written it down somewhere that I read. So sure, internet, why not? We'll believe that. The issue with Herta, as Kyle correctly points out, the knock on him, or the concern if you were hiring him, is consistency. He's extremely fast, but may not always make the best choices. And now IndyCar is not cheap, but it's nowhere near as expensive as Formula One. Of the drivers you mentioned, O'Ward and Palau, I would expect him to be the most expensive in terms of crash damage. And the one that everybody really would want to see would be Palau, because he's put it to all the ex-Formula One drivers who's shown up to IndyCar without like even breaking a sweat, quite frankly. However,
he's Spanish.
Yeah. However, I think he has, I don't know, he's made an unfriend of McLaren, Kyle.
Yeah, McLaren messed him around a bit, and there's been a bit of friction there, whilst he's still performing really high. But this is why I said it at the top of the show. An American, if there's no real viable American, an American associated or American known driver, like an IndyCar champion or someone like coming in who's well known, I think they'd probably settle for something like that, because it's still got the marketability and the popularity, so to speak, the familiarity with that driver in America, so they could still have a sort of a home talent, so to speak.
Okay, can I ask a really stupid question? I mean this not as an insult in any way. I don't watch IndyCar. I don't follow it. Is an Indy driver kind of similar to, like, there's a lot of Formula E drivers who would be fine getting into an F1 car. They might not set the world alight, but they've come through the ladder. They know how to operate that stuff. Indeed, a lot of the Formula E drivers are ex-F1 drivers or junior series drivers. Would most of the IndyCar grid jump in an F1 car and be like, oh, this feels kind of like what I do, but quicker? Do we know? Do we want to guess?
I will say no. I will say there are some differences there, and there's such a wide spectrum of skill in IndyCar.
Is that an euphemism for there's a lot of
I mean, think about some of the drivers we've seen in the past in Formula One who were well off the pace, but we're broadly
looked fine.
Yes,
yeah.
Probably any IndyCar driver could get in a Formula One car and get it around the track within the 107% and maybe not cause crashes. But that's not what we're looking for here. What you're looking for is who is of a correct age. Because if we were just gonna ignore age for a minute, Scott Dixon would be my first pick. I think Scott Dixon would have been a WDC if he'd gone to Formula One. He's that good, but he's in his 40s now, so he's kind of aged out. Newgarden was another one that might have been good, but is kind of on the far side of the age thing. Of the people who are of an age to be entering Formula One, Palau is clearly the most consistent and most highly skilled. Herta can be as fast on his day, but hasn't shown the consistency. And O'Ward has flirted. He was in the Red Bull program. They sent him to Japan, and then the FIA took away his super license points, so he dropped out and went to IndyCar. He's the other one that could be, he might just walk into a Formula One car and just be another Lawson or another Colapinto.
All right. Well, tell me,
just don't know.
Tell me about O'Ward then. So is he American?
He is, you'll love this, Mexican.
Oh. I mean, it's not a Mexican name
just like
that rolls off the tongue.
Ocon is Irish, he's Mexican. No, but he is genuinely Mexican, but he's been racing in America, so he's thought of, as Kyle has pointed out, as an American driver.
Well, that would count. He's like American enough.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
He's from the Americas, and he was he did race. Red Bull did hire him, tried to get him a super license by sending him to Super Formula in Japan because he'd won the Indy Lights competition. But then one of the competitors pointed out that the number of people racing in Indy Lights meant that technically he shouldn't have had those points. And the FIA said, oh yeah, you don't get those points after all. And he's like, well, if I can't pull this off, then there's no point in me staying in Japan for a super license that I'm not going to be anywhere near getting, even if I finish fifth in the championship or whatever he needed to do to get a super license. So Red Bull said, yeah, no, we totally agree. Thanks for your time. Enjoyed working with you, and back off to IndyCar he went.
So we're getting some sort of some sociology lessons here from Rolando, who says he's like me. He's both Mexican and American, which is subculturally different to being Mexican-American, which is fascinating, I think, if you unpack that. Kyle?
He also seems like a very, very nice chap. I'd love to see him in,
I like
in
nice
Formula
people.
One.
I like nice people. Yeah.
He seems very excited, very like when he's articulating himself. Like after the he had his test in Abu Dhabi in the McLaren, and I think it was a young driver test, and he was so excited when he got out, and the way he was explaining it, I'd love to see him in Formula One. I think he's very much got the American to camera vibe, if you know what I mean. It's more sort of character, more sort of thing about him. He's definitely got the IndyCars about him, which I think Formula One would benefit from.
I think I know what you're driving at, because I get this from my social background as well, which is Europeans actually, but particularly the British and German, are very reserved. So you're not allowed to have fun on purpose. You have to have it accidentally. Oh, I'm going about my endeavours in a sort of stoic Marcus Aurelius kind of way. And it does seem quite jolly, doesn't it, in the background? Whereas the Americans like, yay, race cars. And I have to say, I much prefer that. There is a fundamental problem here for Cadillac in picking their driver lineup. And I think because we've covered IndyCar a little bit, because we've gone through Paolo, Award, Herta, no one's really mentioned Grosjean. I don't think anyone really wants to have a conversation about Grosjean. No, they're all saying no. So the next problem is, let's say you pick someone from an adjacent field who is going to be a risk or may not have had the time to prep, because they're not going to put either of these drivers in an F2 car to prep them for this. They're not going to send them to Super Formula. They're going to say, let's take your current experience and we're hiring you on the strength of that. We're going to we're going to stuff a manila envelope with dollars and look, your super license came through. Allegedly for a future thing. I'm not suggesting actual bribery, but I'm saying the rules will be broken in a God clause if they need them to. The problem Cadillac has is you need to pair that kind of risk with a known top entity, and there isn't one. This is what Matt was saying was F1 isn't a great actual talent factory. Matt, there is no top tier driver for Cadillac to go get. And if we say top tier drivers, let's see if you guys argue with me. Verstappen, he's an amazing get. If you want to pair Verstappen up with your American hope and give your American someone to learn against, Verstappen, amazing, top tier. An aging Hamilton, yeah, great. And Alonso, pair them up with Hamilton and Alonso, and you're going to score sometimes at least, you're going to score the best possible result that your car can give you. And then maybe Leclerc. Here are the drivers that are definitely at some point going to extract the maximum out of your car. Anyone else on the F1 grid, I think, or from the previous, people who've just retired or been kicked out, you won't be sure that you're getting the maximum that your engineers have delivered.
I don't think that's important.
Oh, how is that not important? Right.
I will tell you right now if you let me. I think what's important is you have a driver who's had experience of a top level team and can give, and who is God level at giving feedback of the car. The development of the car is going to be the thing that is most challenging by far. So the question is, which drivers are out there? Now, you mentioned Alonso. very good, knows what he needs, knows what he wants. He can give excellent feedback. Hamilton, I believe the same. Leclerc, I believe the same. But there are other drivers out there that can do this job. You could hire Anthony Davidson from Mercedes to come be your test reserve driver. And I tell you what, you'd get an awful lot out of that, wouldn't you?
Yes, you would. My thing for that is, yes, you want the experienced driver in the test and reserve role. I wouldn't go for an Alonso or Hamilton to come in, because by 2026, Alonso will come armed with a bus pass and Hamilton's on the turn already by the seams of it. So by 2026, I don't think they're going to be your great performers. You said it right, Spanners. Occasionally, like every now and then, they will both perform brilliantly, but I think they'll be way too mistake prone and over the hill.
They might be old by then.
By that time, what I think you should do is get a budding journeyman, which is several in Formula One. You know, like a comparatively young driver now who's clearly never going to be a champion, who will be the next Bottas or the next journeyman coming in.
Yep.
So you can cash it in now. And my cash would be Gasly or Ocon.
Gasly was mine. Gasly was mine.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Like Gasly, Ocon, or even an Albon, someone who's destined to always be a journeyman. They'll have experience. They'll be able to develop the car. They'll be a relatively safe pair of hands, and more importantly, a known quantity. So when you have your super fast or young or appropriate talent smashing the car to beats in the other seat, you've got a yardstick in them. So that's who I would go for.
So I would just want to, I'll take Albon out of that list for me, because he hasn't proved himself against the other journeyman. So if you want to have the journeyman battles, Gasly and Ocon have both gone toe to toe, with the likes of the Hulkenbergs and Perez before he forgot how to do that kind of thing. They've gone toe to toe in those battles and been up there. So they're known. You know that they're going to be quick and deliver.
I want to add a name to that you might not expect. I want to add 3 names to that, because we're talking about current F1 drivers now. Top of my list, Carlos Sainz. He's going to Williams, but is there a performance clause?
Yeah, it's 26,
would he consider coming to GM? Because I think that would, is he as fast as Leclerc or Hamilton? No, but if you look at what he's achieved and how he's achieved it, I think that would be an amazing get for a brand new team.
I think so.
Coming into the sport.
Right. I think you're right. I think that would be a get. But what you need is the odd performance, I think, is more important. So the odd time where you actually maximize what you're getting out of that car, and the engineers can go, aha, on this great weekend, we now know exactly where we're lacking. If there's always a bit of a question mark of, are they actually delivering the ultimate pace? Like, we don't know. Then what are they developing against? So I think for that team to come in as well, for the sake of headlines, you don't need to worry. Like, someone in the live chat, I think, someone said Gasly is like basically lacks the patience or whatever for a full season. But even if I agreed with that, that wouldn't matter. If he's the driver that can go and get you that odd, strange podium in the rain, or like a big points finish, and that will generate headlines, and that will be great for your PR team. So I think whatever Cadillac does, they must have this established F1 name, like the best possible extant F1 name that they can possibly get. That's what they need to go for.
Yeah, and preferably as young as possible for them as well. So yeah, like, don't go for the elder statesman. Go for somebody who's just on the cusp of becoming an elder statesman, because then they're still young enough. They still have that drive. So as you say, they will be putting the car on the line. They will be getting everything out of it. Whereas an older Alonso or Hamilton, you could argue, are they really putting the full commitment in anymore? Are they here for a retirement fund, sort of thing? So yeah, I think a young charger who's slightly starting to approach the point where he's like, I need to perform. I need to guarantee. I need to get my pension here. I need to guarantee. I need to guarantee my next 8 years in the sport being being new standard. I'm going to be the new Bottas. I'm going to be the new Hulkenberg or the new journeyman. You definitely need something. I think we've solved it, Spanners, to be fair. I think it's definitely Gasly. It can't be anyone else.
We'll do Matt. I've got a couple more suggestions.
I do too. And this is because I'm looking at the midfield right now, and we have too many drivers and not enough seats. Going to throw a couple of names at you. I'm going to start with one of Spanner's favorites, Yuki Tsunoda.
Yeah, right. Okay. I was basically waiting for you to stop talking so that I could say Tsunoda.
Go ahead. And there's another who may not get a seat, Colapinto. And last, my personal favorite that you now hate is, of course, Liam Lawson.
Oh, yeah. Boo.
One of those is probably not going to have a seat for 2026 and could be a really good get for a Cadillac team.
Yeah, right. So what we have to understand here, is it a buyer's market or a seller's market? Is it the team market or is it the driver's market? So if Cadillac were coming in now as the 10th team, you might go, well, actually, who could they get? But the point at which they're coming in now, there's a lot of names that are nibbling around Formula One that now there's an 11th team. Maybe Cadillac is a bit more attractive. So Colapinto, I think that would be, I know he's taken a bit of a knock recently, but if that little knock he's taken is enough for Red Bull and Alpine to have, second ideas, well, in that case, look, you've had, a third of a season in Formula One. Come and drive our simulator. Come see how that's getting on. Help us develop. Give us little hints. Tell us what you've learned. Paired up with a more experienced driver. Does Colapinto count as American? Does that count? I don't know.
He's South American. He's from the Americas.
I don't know how you guys work. If we were with a firm that was desperate for a European driver, we'd be having these arguments around Turkish drivers and Azerbaijani drivers. And you'd be asking me, does that count?
It's a big place, but here's what I would say. I think Colapinto has made a big enough splash in Formula One, given the larger market share now of America, U.S. America, which is what GM is going to be wanting to represent, that I think he would be absolutely on their radar, both for his performances in the car and for his presentation out of the car. I think he would be a fantastic spokesman for the team. And obviously on his day, he is fast and wickedly competitive.
So whilst it might sound like a stupid question from me saying, does Colapinto count? If there was a reverse thing, like there was a Brazilian championship and they go, wow, we really need British representation for this British team. And then they said, how about Danny Rick? Most British people would go, that's close enough.
That'll do.
Yeah, we'll take an Aussie.
Honorary.
Yeah, that's fine. We'll do that. Obviously, some people are talking about Daniel Ricciardo. So he is someone with relevant F1 experience. And I don't think it's that ridiculous. The big thing that's going against him is you would say, well, he couldn't keep up with Norris. He didn't look great against Tsunoda. So you're almost acknowledging a baked in 90%, like you're baking in that you're not getting that top bit of race pace and performance. However, no one hates working with Daniel Ricciardo. Media stuff and PR stuff is not nothing. Plus, he's got recent relevant experience in F1 teams, in developing, in simulator work and stuff. Daniel Ricciardo, I think, Kyle, would be a disappointing pick, but you would understand it. You go, oh, I see why they did that.
Let me preface this by saying I really like Daniel Ricciardo. Everyone does, and I think he's great. I'm not a fan, but I think that would be a poor and weak and a bit of a lame signing. They're cashing in and going purely for the media brownie points by getting Daniel Ricciardo. Like, the cherry's not there anymore. He's had so many bites of it. The cherry's been consumed for Daniel Ricciardo. Like, it's
a pip.
Yeah, exactly. And the pips there, and what happens to pips? People generally choke on them. It's not good.
Spit them out.
So yeah. Well, that's even better analogy. So so Danny Rick as much as it pains for me to say it, he's proven quite reliably that he's lost his previous magic. Whatever it was, he doesn't seem to have it anymore. So I think that would be a soft signing. If anything, you'd have Daniel Ricciardo in the second seat for just purely marketability purposes. But no, I think that would be a dreadful signing.
Ricciardo would be a great person to bring onto the team in a development role, I think. He's driven a number of cars. He's been in a number of teams. He's got a lot of length of experience in the sport. He would be great to chuck into simulators. He would be great to send off on demonstration drives. He would be great to put in the car for testing to help correlate the simulator in real life. But he isn't the person you want racing for you. And it just occurred to me, I left out one very important fact about Colapinto. Sorry. And then we can move on. Which is that he is fluent in Spanish, and that's not an insignificant
that's not
U.S.
nothing.
market as
No,
well.
that's not nothing.
So that's another good argument for him if he doesn't get taken up by one of the current F1 teams.
Chris S. in our patron chat says, Sonny Hayes is an experienced American. He can help design the car to be fast in the turns and be built for combat. Although there is some, this is from the F1 movie, there is some concern over their attitude to safety because they didn't say anything about making it safe. I am so looking forward to that F1 movie coming out.
It's going to be a train wreck, isn't it? It's going to be a train wreck.
If it's good, then that's great. If it's a disaster, that's somehow even better.
I'm already feeling radiated embarrassment from it. You know, when you watch something that's bad and you just get embarrassed for watching, I'm already feeling it.
No, it doesn't matter because we're all in whatever. So if it's something to hate watch, it's something to hate watch. If they pull off a Top Gun Maverick, then it's a pleasant, beautiful surprise. But they already have my money, and that's probably part of the reason. Like, as soon as it's an F1 movie, I'm like, oh, that's just a certain amount of money that I have to give to them a couple of times, and then the streaming version and/or DVD.
Yeah, making the family sit through the streaming version with you is just a rite of passage. So are we moving on to ex-Formula One drivers?
No, I have one. Well, we are because we're on Daniel Ricciardo, who is an ex-Formula One driver. I just wanted to make a general point when we were talking about hiring drivers kind of for the sake of their PR, because Valtteri Bottas might fall into that as well, because he's become a bit of a meme lord at Stake, and Stake have done fantastic stuff. Like their PR is amazing.
Well, I'm glad you bring up Bottas, because he would actually, if you're looking for a driver, is he not a good choice?
He is a good choice. So I just wanted to make that general point of Bottas and Ricciardo are the PR teams grabbing them and going, we can do wonders with them. And the re-signing of Ricciardo as a Red Bull reserve, I think before he got the AlphaTauri seat, wasn't it? And then he did the Silverstone test where he definitely would have been on pole. 8 times faster than Max Verstappen he was in that Silverstone test. There was a moment where there's basically a meme where you'd have this athlete running along in different types of shoes. So he'd be running in trainers, then in flip-flops, then in clown shoes, then in whatever, all these different types of shoes. And that was meant to be hilarious. And one of the very first things they had Daniel Ricciardo do was recreate that meme. And I think that's where the PR teams started to cross this line of going, oh no, we must adhere to the trends. They call them trends on TikTok, where if someone does a funny thing, then everybody has their karaoke style turn at then doing that thing. And this is where the PR team starts sort of crossing a line where it becomes actually quite tiresome now, seeing all the F1 teams doing these trends over and over again. And that makes certain drivers into meme lords. And maybe Lando Norris, in a sense, with all his improv, was the first meme lord in Formula One. But Ricciardo definitely was wheeled out for that, and then dumped back into a race seat where he really wasn't in a position to take advantage of it. But the danger is they see what they've done with Bottas at Stake and go, we'll have some of that. And then he's there. You're right, Matt, he is a good driver, but the danger is he's only there to make jokes whilst wearing a mullet and a moustache.
Right. Well, there are 2 other Formula One drivers who will not be in the sport that might be worth mentioning. Although there's 3 on the list, I think there's one we all would agree probably won't get asked. But I'm going to bring up Kevin Magnussen right now.
I love Magnussen.
He would be, again, if you're looking for a driver to come in and race the first season or 2 and help you develop this car, I think he's a great choice. He's been around a long time. He started at McLaren, more than a decade in the sport. Dad is a good driver. He's driven a lot of different cars. And he's worked at a team that has had its struggles, but also had its successes. So I could see him being a good, safe pair of hands-ish to get started with.
He'd certainly be great for developing the crash structures and developing the sporting director's nous of the rule book to argue against getting penalties and penalty points. I think you'd be good, Magnussen, there. Again, I think if this season hadn't happened, I would have agreed with you. Like, Magnussen would be good, but this season he has been pretty much comprehensively outdone by Hülkenberg, has he not? So why wouldn't you go for Hülkenberg instead? Safer as well.
I'm assuming he's at Audi and unavailable.
Yeah, okay. But no, I personally, I think Magnussen will be a terrible idea.
And also, Hulkenberg will technically still be in the sport, and we're talking about people not in the sport. But I bring up another name.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I also think that Magnussen's time has been gone, hasn't it?
So he falls into the Ricardo category.
Sadly, yeah, which is a shame, and it's almost worse. And I say this with love because I have a lot of Danish family, and they'll kill me if I don't love Magnussen. And he is a driver built for combat. But his test that he's ultimately failed is less than the test that Ricardo failed. So Ricardo, has gone up against the GOAT Tsunoda and Lando Norris as well, championship contender this year. I think the test that Magnussen has failed to be significantly behind Hulkenberg, that's worse. So I think that's
significantly behind though.
Oh yeah,
I don't think I'm going to go look at the points now because I feel like there's been a shift this season, but whatever.
Okay, that's fine. What I would say is let's not be slavish to points. I don't actually know what the points are.
No. But he's definitely had some good performances. I don't think he's out of good performances.
Early in the season, when Perez and Hamilton were struggling at various points, who did they find themselves stuck behind? It was Hulkenberg first, more or less, and then you had Magnussen as the rear gunner. So I would be surprised if this season shows that Magnussen has had any kind of advantage over Hulkenberg.
All right, so I am occasionally guilty of just making things up, but
that's fine.
I do believe that there was an issue that was solved that let him be much closer to Hulkenberg.
That'll be a good one for the season review, I think.
Yeah, I'll talk to Summers about it. Maybe he remembers. But what I want to say, the other thing about Magnussen that might make him attractive is he is kind of an honorary American. His dad has been racing sports cars for a long time in the US. It's a recognized name. So again, from a marketing point of view, he is pretty American. And honestly, his attitude, I think, would resonate well. But the driver I want to bring up that will not be in Formula One, but they might be interested in for different reasons, would be Joe.
I think that is a good shout. Such a good shout that is actually the prediction I did as a contribution to Tomo's channel as well. Because I think if you had Joe there, he's looked fine against Bottas, hasn't he? He's looked okay.
Yeah.
He's done the thing that we always say not for the rookies and pay drivers to not do, which is, don't stick it in the wall every 5 minutes. And he seems well liked, and he's one of the fashionistas of the paddock. So that goes in his favor. Plus, you've got the massive market. And I'm betting he comes with
some money and some market too. I mean,
the market.
He might want to sell some cars.
Yeah, the market will be the key one. I mean, not Audi. Beg your pardon. Alfa GM. Alfa Romeo. They leaned on the signing of Zhou Guanyu initially as marketing, and I'm sure GM has some kind of access to how successful that was. So did Zhou Guanyu, make a dent in the Chinese market so far? I haven't heard anyone say, do you know what? Where Zhou Guanyu goes, car buyers go in China. I've not heard that.
I have no idea, but as we all know, having a driver from a country gives you a marketing opportunity that you would not otherwise have. And if GM's trying to sell, say, electric vehicles over there, could be. But again, from a performance point of view, that's not the person you're really going to choose.
No, exactly. So you could end up here with a Zhou Guanyu who isn't top tier as far as performance goes, with an untested outsider who has a reputation for being crashy in Colton Herta. So honestly, this is a minefield for Cadillac. They need to get that established midfielder. And I think you're right, Carl. I think we solved it. I think we need Ocon or Gasly to get offered some cash.
Yeah, definitely. Or I'm going to throw a bit of a curveball in here. Someone from your top tier list, but it could be an actual possibility. So Cadillac look like they're going to have Ferrari engines, probably in all reality. Leclerc's getting quite frustrated with Ferrari. Now, imagine if Ferrari tend to favour Hamilton a little bit more. Leclerc finally has enough and is like, right, I need to go and forge my own way here. I need to go stand alone and become a legend. A slightly disgruntled Leclerc trying to make his own legacy. Ferrari, of course, it will finish semi-amicably. Ferrari will grease the rails and make that happen and maybe reduce the wage bill a bit. Cadillac for Leclerc. Leclerc could be an outside shot at their lead star driver to go in and do his own Schumacher in reverse.
Thing is, we're basing this all on the current climate, but these contracts will be getting signed towards the end of next season. So we do have a full year, and a year is a very long time in Formula One. It's exactly 12 months, in fact. Now, all of this is kind of assuming that this is going to be a decent effort from Cadillac, that they're going to come in. And I think there's such an excitement and optimism that you have to ask, will Cadillac actually be half decent? So my betting is, I'll give you my betting. They're going to have a little bit of an advantage because it's unrestricted development. If they throw enough money at it and get enough people at it and have good enough facilities, I don't know what their wind tunnel is. I don't know who their chief engineer is and who their aerodynamicists are. But let's say they can pull a Haas and they can use that advantage to get people in and get a bit of a jump start. I think that they could come in and get 7th, 6th at the top end. Maybe like have a look at like really establishing themselves in that midfield. And then as that advantage slips away, I think they're just going to drop like a stone. I don't think people are really realizing just how hard it is to make an F1 team, because it's been so long since we had a new F1 team come in and do anything. You can count Renault maybe as the most successful new team. When you had Marussia and Caterham and those at the back, they were seconds off the pace. I think people are really, really underestimating how hard it is. I think they're going to have a decent first season and then drop. Who should disagree with me? Who wants to disagree with me the most? Let's go for Kyle first and then Matt. I will shut up.
I'm disagreeing with you because I think they will be semi-decent, and there's quite an important contributory factor. They're coming in 2026. Now, until they actually announce their engine partner, I believe they're allowed to work on the 26 aero regulations where the other current teams at the moment can't. So they could, and as you said, they could have a good head start. But look at what Haas did. When Haas come in, I think they got 5th in their first race. They were really good. And
cool. Where are they now?
Well, still scoring points semi-regularly, actually.
Right now, they're ahead of Alpine by 1 point.
I picked the wrong year for that argument.
And I think Cadillac are way more serious than Haas as an enterprise. I've always called Haas more of an assembler than a manufacturer. They get everyone else to do everything else for them, basically, and essentially assemble the cars. And I think they're probably like the least serious sort of like apart from Renault, who don't usually take themselves seriously when they go in. Like, I think Cadillac are way more serious because they've gone for, haven't they got Pat Simmons already signed up as like a contributor? They've just gone for like a Renault guy. They've got a European base. They're like properly throwing everything towards it. I think they're going to come in, be semi-decent, and have a few good point scoring results and sit in the midfield for a couple of years. I think they're going to be solid midfield.
So
maybe
let's
even better.
Start with Haas. First season. And so it's important to understand they changed a lot of rules because of how Haas came into the sport. I believe once they signed their intent to enter the sport, once it's an actual signed contract, they are limited developmentally by the current regulation set. And maybe that means that until they have an engine partner, they aren't. But once that deal is set in stone and they sign on the dotted line, pretty sure they're now regulated by the FIA, because that was the loophole that Haas took absolute advantage of, that and free movement of personnel between Ferrari and Haas. And with all of that, Haas finished 8th in their first season. So any finish better than 8th would actually be, I think, a real achievement. But if you're comparing Haas to GM Cadillac, I mean, you're comparing apples to kumquats, my friend. This is an entirely different sort of endeavor.
Oh, is it? Explain why.
Yes.
So show me the last thing that GM did. Like, what was the last thing where they came in and just stamped their authority on a motorsport as complex as Formula One?
I mean, I will put it to you as simply is do you know what the current market cap of GM is right now? You're talking about.
Of course I do. It's 87 billion.
Hundreds of billions. They are a massive. They are spending. They have resource, and they have an extremely long history in motorsports, going all the way back to not Dan Gurney, Shelby. Like they were racing in the 50s and working on aerodynamics, going to Le Mans 24 with the Corvettes and whatever. They've been racing a long time. They have drawers full of useful information. They can drag out both for their road car division and for their racing car division. They've been competitive with Ford for a very long time, and they've been active in IMSA, which has a lot of the energy recovery stuff that's going to be current in these regulation sets. Their Corvettes are, by all accounts, the best sports car you can buy for the dollar, bar none. You buy a Corvette and you've basically bought a Ferrari that costs 5 or 6 times as much. They are not a nothing outfit, and Cadillac has been racing as well in IMSA for quite a long time.
Well,
they are a very serious outfit.
Oh, I'm not doubting they're not serious.
Whereas
not doubting
Haas, I don't want to put down as not being serious, because I believe they were deadly serious, but they were always a team that was budget. We are going to do the most with the least was always the Haas mantra. But I believe GM is, we intend to come in and make a big deal and do well in this sport, which means they are going to spend the money to make it happen.
Yeah, and this is why I compared them to Haas, because in my opinion, Haas are doing really well. They're like over-punching and they're doing really well, and they are a solid, established Formula One team now. And GM coming in, I think Haas are kind of like if Greg's did a Formula One team, on the cheap and the budget and do that, they're like going to come in. So if GM, as Matt has quite nicely laid out, they're serious stuff, and I think this is a serious entry, probably more serious than Audi or the VAG group.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
don't get me started on that.
I agree. So I really need to clarify before we get too many emails that me saying they won't succeed at the top tier is not the same as me saying it's not a serious effort. I just think that developing a prototype Formula One car is it's the best prototype series, the most competitive prototype series from an engineering point of view, and it's also the most expensive. So as with all these big firms, is it the whole company going, Formula One is really part of our futures, this is what we want to drive towards, or is it Derek Jeffreyson who's currently the CFO, who's like, I've got a real passion for Formula One, but then he goes into super yachts next season and then that commitment drifts. So that's a real scenario, because we saw that scenario with Renault. Oh, no, it's not really Renault failing, it's Alpine now. We saw that scenario with Renault. It looks like we're seeing that scenario with Audi now. I think my impression is that this is a much more serious effort than that. But it's still really, really difficult. That's what I feel like people are really underestimating. You're taking on giants like Mercedes with their Brackley facility and Red Bull with all their championships, and Ferrari with Maranello. You're taking on those giants. It's a massive endeavor. So can we at least agree that breaking into the top 4 is not a serious short-term ambition? At least that.
Oh, yeah. No. I mean, like I said, Haas finished 8th their first 2 seasons, and then I think their best so far has been 5th. I would expect if they finish better than 8th in their first season, that's a great show.
So that's what we're talking about. At least we're scaling it correctly now.
And I think if you look at where Aston is now in terms of money spent, you're definitely starting to get into that GM arena. And they're 5th, but they're miles away from the top 4 teams right now.
Okay, so what's the aim? American? Because look, listen, you, America, you've made such a fuss. You've stamped your feet. You've said, I'm going to tell my dad / FBI on you. And you've got your team now. So what are you going to do with it? What's the real, what's a win?
I think, honestly, a win is 7th or better.
Wow. Really?
For the first season,
Okay, then the first 3.
I will like define your terms here. I think your short-term horizon is you're looking to get up around 6th, 5th, and then start to have those races where you're genuinely competitive for podiums after about 4 years. The trick here, though, the potential fly is the engine development, because they are talking about bringing their own power unit. And that either is going to be something that works for them or against them. And that's key. I really cannot predict how that's going to go for them. So that potentially puts them back or forwards.
Yeah, and with their own engine and stuff. Like, so originally, I just want to sort of say and get this right. So my understanding was they don't like Andretti, Michael Andretti. And
Michael in particular, yes.
This is the same outfit, essentially. It's just been renamed and some other people, basically. They've juggled it and they've got him out of the way. So one of the reasons Formula One gave was, we want GM and a manufacturer to come in with like an engine. So now they've let him in, but GM said they may consider making an engine for 28, but it might be in like the next decade. So they might not even come in with their own engine. So surely that just means that Formula One's reason that they gave a agent originally to not let Michael Andretti in was absolutely codswallop, and it was just a personal thing. They just didn't like him. So now he's out the way. Now they're listening to him in. And GM, I think they probably won't end up making their own engine, because they would want to see how these engine rigs look and how they're going to be. Are they going to invest loads when I think the engine rigs could be a disaster?
If the Ferrari,
shortly afterwards.
Also, if the Ferrari's doing pretty well, like just stay with the Ferrari.
Well, I think what you're looking at there, and this gets into the fact that Ford is now the engine partner for Red Bull. So I think you see GM and Ford always competing with each other for a marketing share of their vehicles. And if Ford says we make a Formula One engine that wins a championship with Red Bull, that's really great for Ford, but it's kind of terrible for GM. But where I think they may be canny is, how long are we going to really have these power unit regulations? So they may be like, they're going to work because the fundamental V6 architecture doesn't really seem like that's going to change a lot. It hasn't changed from when we had them in 2014 to these next set of regulations. They will probably keep that, but they might wait to the set of regulations after this one, depending upon where they think they're going to go and how much they can put their finger on the scale and move them in a direction that they personally like.
So when you said 7th, I was ready to argue with you, and I was like, no, listen, right? And I started counting on my fingers and like taking off my socks now, because to count the teams, I now need to take off my left sock. So 7th actually makes sense. So exclude the top 4, McLaren, Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes, and I think Alpine and Aston Martin should ordinarily be in that little kind of midfield battle by themselves. So they are fighting Williams, Haas, Audi, Cadillac. That's the battle at the back. And if they win that and finish P7, I'll give you that's a win. That matches my expectations for what would be a good result for them. Is that going to be good enough for GM and the board? No, I don't think so. I think the way they're talking, I think the way Americans are talking about it, I don't think that will wash.
I don't know what they're saying to the board, but the board isn't the investors, the people who own the stock are ultimately the problem. They're the ones you got to satisfy. They won't care where you finish if you can demonstrate that the money you're investing is selling cars. That's what I would say to you.
My bottom line on this is, yay! We've got more than 10 teams. Woohoo! I'm really happy. I hope I didn't come across as negative in any way. Like, I'm so happy. Well done.
I'm very excited. Can I get one more name in before we go?
Oh, I've got a couple. Yeah, go on. Let's quick fire, and then Kyle's going to tell us why Qatar's actually good.
This is the left field name, but we saw him win in Watkins Glen, and that's Connor Zilch.
He's on my list. Did you steal that from my list?
No, and I'll tell you why I didn't, because I went to IMSA to look for drivers, including like the Taylors, Ricky Taylor, Jordan Taylor. But Connor Zilch, it turns out he's raced LMP2s, and he's won at Daytona 24 hours and at Sebring 12 hours. So he's got some experience here that I was unaware of till I went to look for it today. And man, he was fantastic, right?
See, you were too busy playing with your new camera, filming the press conference with Juan Pablo Montoya. I was listening to a close personal friend of the show, Juan Pablo Montoya, and he was talking about Connor racing in the European series, because obviously Montoya has Sebastian Montoya in F3, and he was rating Connor, but the way he was rating him was saying, yeah, I know you guys think he's really, really good. All the kids in Europe are that good. They're all that good. So he's a genuine European ladder talent that has gone to America. I think he's deeply embedded in that. What's he in now? He's in
he won the ARCA Menard series, and I think he's I don't know if he's racing full-time NASCAR this season.
I think Infinity.
Not.
So
Infinity,
maybe, yeah. So I think that will be out of it. But the other NASCAR name I would say is Kyle Larson, because he did say he would beat he'd beat Max Verstappen in everything except an F1 car, up to and including electric lawnmowers. So surely, if he's nearly as good as Verstappen, he would be good for Cadillac.
And this is the sarcasm suggestion, I take it.
No, I'm sure he's a really good race driver, but he put himself in the frame, not me. And I think we're out of names officially, so we'll say to Kyle, Qatar for me has been unimpressive. I'm not fond of it, except for the fact of the drama of everyone being a bit too warm. Why am I wrong?
I like it. Well, it wasn't a track which would ever be considered in the before times, but in the after times, when we've gone there as a matter of course, because we had to replace another track. I think it's an amazing spectacle circuit. Bit like Mugello, it'll be a great qualifying circuit. The Formula 1 cars look spectacularly fast. In the direction changes, there's lots of super fast sweeps. And we did actually see some semi-good racing and overtakes. It's got that huge straight, massive DRS zone into turn one where you can go side by side through it. If the dust allows. Yes, the conditions aren't great. And the thing that happened last year was the curbs, the horrible pyramid curbs that were cutting the tyres and forcing them onto only an 18-lap stint, which I absolutely love because it was flat out, and that's why the drivers were succumbing as well to have it. They're not used to
because they had to keep pushing
every lap. Yeah,
they couldn't tyre save basically.
Insane heat as well. Yeah, exactly. They couldn't tyre heat. So it was like back to like the 90s Schumacher era of like sprinting between pit stops, that's my golden era of Formula 1. I liked it. So I love seeing the spectacle of the middle and the final sector, the last 3-4 corners. I just wow factor. I get annoyed of modern Formula 1 and the sort of two zoomed in camera shots, which are just like, doesn't look spectacular. Qatar Formula 1 looks spectacular. That's why it's good.
It's not like the olden days, is it, Kyle?
It never is, and it never will be, and it's a shame, and it makes me deeply, deeply sad and regretful for being old and definitely not wearing rose-tinted spectacles.
Amazing. Well, it's another Grand Prix. I think the shine is off the season in a way because things are decided, but people are trying to get us excited about who's going to win the constructors. It never particularly thrills me. I do like how passionate Leclerc is about trying to chase down P2. I think that's why he was so angry. And there was a clip of Russell and Norris laughing because they found out that Leclerc has a bonus for finishing P2. Is Leclerc, is he short of money?
Suddenly that makes a lot more sense.
Does he need...
I'm laughing.
Does he need, extra dog food money? I think he's doing all right.
It's a signal. I have won my bonus. I mean, they're race drivers. They want to win everything always. That's kind of why they wound up where they are.
I hope that continues because I did wonder, after the last race, why was Leclerc so animated? Because I think they must have had an agreement that they were going to help him get P2 and get that bonus. So there's still that. There's still drama there. Are McLaren going to fight for the constructors? Are they? We thought they were fighting for the Drivers' Championship. And then even before that was officially over, they went, oh, no, we weren't really. Oh,
what are they going to say to Lando if they don't? I mean, come on. Of course they need to win. McLaren need to win a championship.
Because they said
it has been a while.
They said that's the one they were actually pushing for, didn't they?
Yeah.
So they can't go back on that now.
Yeah, no, they own that. But they've gone at Qatar and they filed the curbs down. But the other thing to understand is that I believe that this might be the highest stress on the tires all season. So we could see some wild.
Okay, well, are we going to have
stuff.
that thing again though, where they say limited stints?
No, that was because of the curbs.
Oh, okay.
So they potentially think they fixed that. But we've also got driver cooling now on the car that we never had before, mandated because of what happened last season. So Qatar it's an extreme environment for the drivers and the cars. Although if it's not hot, you won't have the same problems that they had last season with the drivers getting sick and stuff like that.
Thank you for joining us on Missed Apex Podcast. You can follow all of these guys' social medias. They're all on everything by looking in the descriptions, and they'll be there in order, all their links. You'll notice my link is at the top because I'm the best one. So go and follow us all at Blue Sky. We are going to do a list at some point. In fact, Matt, is it okay to just get a list of all the panels, Blue Sky?
I believe there's a starter pack.
Oh, okay.
And I can put that in the notes.
We'll try and get that in the show notes below. We're all having a good time over there. I'm still on Twitter as well. We've abandoned Facebook. Sorry, Facebook. But also do come and follow me on Instagram by searching for Spanners Ready. I do enjoy my Instagram now. I've gotten into it. Do consider being a patron at patreon.com/missedapex. We are definitely going to have content all throughout the winter, so please tell people you know that Missed Apex is a fun place to hang out, and when their actual favorite podcasts run out of content over the winter, we do find podcasts that will keep you ticking over. Until we see you next, work hard, be kind, and have fun. This was Missed Apex Podcast. That was just under an hour. Well done, guys. We did it. We maintained our 100% record of being under an hour. Yeehaw!